Hi there, and thanks for joining me for another tutorial. My name is Erin Eno, and today I'm going to be showing you how to paint this stormy skies landscape. So grab your paints and let's get started. Before we start, I'll just quickly run through my materials for you. I'm using Baohong's Academy watercolor paper. It's 100% cotton and 140 pound. I've cut it down to roughly 5 by 7, and because we're using a lot of wet and a lot of water, I've taped it down to a board so it won't warp. Okay, and I've got Van Gogh paints in my palette, my jar of water, paper towel. I also have facial tissues for this one, and for brushes I have a Princeton Snap 1-inch wash. You don't need a wash brush, you can just use any big brush that you have. And I've also got a Princeton Snap flat shader in a size 16, and 2 Princeton Snap rounds, one in a size 12 and one in a size 2. Okay, so to start, I'm just going to wet the top, I was going to say third, but a little more than a third. Just give it a good even coat of water. Now I'm going to start with my size 12 round, and I'm going to start making some stormy looking, whoops, I grabbed the wrong brush. I'm tired. It's late at night, but I just felt like painting. So my size 12 round, we'll try this again. And I'm going to make a dark blue mixture out of ultramarine blue and some Payne's gray. That might be a little too much Payne's gray. A little more blue in there. Okay, and I'm just going to start painting some kind of stormy looking sky and clouds. And that's roughly where the horizon line is going to be. And this is just, I'm just playing around here with the paint, really, and it's going to be about putting paint down, moving it around, lifting paint off, just until I get the look of the clouds that I want. So it's kind of trial and error. So I'm going to take some carmine here, just a very light wash of it, and just tap it in to just get some kind of, you know, ominous kind of pinky sky in there. And it will mix with the blue, kind of go purpley. You can add some water to push that pigment away. Just clean off your brush, tap in some more water. Keep tapping in some blue, just kind of playing around until we get a nice kind of stormy sky. I'm going to put a little bit more of the carmine in there. And while it's still quite wet, I'm going to just add a little bit more water. And just see, I'm going to tip the board and just kind of let that water kind of run down. I'm going to do it all 4 ways, I think. I think while it's tipped, I will also add more of the blue mixture. Just kind of let it run and go crazy. And while it's still wet, I'm going to take one of my tissues and just start kind of getting some cloud shapes. So I'll be doing this like probably a few times until I get it the way I want it to look. So it's, like I say, it's just trial and error. So basically I'm just playing around at this point until it looks like I want it to look. So you can get some defined edges by just tapping in some dark blue just at the edge of some of these clouds. Okay, so now I'm taking my number 2 brush and I've got a mixture of burnt sienna and the Payne's Gray. And I'm also, because this is kind of, I don't want to say it's like a reddy brown, but I just want it a little bit yellower. So I'm going to add in some, oh dear, yellow ochre. Oh, I just drew a blank there. And then I'm going to dry off my brush and just go in and get a little bit of paint, and let me see how, yeah, that edge is still very wet on this side, so I'm gonna have to be careful there. I'm just gonna soften this up a bit. There. But I want to just start putting in the mountains or the land where I want it to go. And I know it's gonna bleed up, so I'm not going to drag it up as high as I want it to be at the very end, but I just want to start kind of establishing where, at least where they're going to be. Now for the water, I'm going to go back to my my 12 round and go back to the same blue and I also want the Payne's Gray in there because I want it to be a kind of a gray blue. And I'm going to get most of the pigment off my brush and just go in with a light wash and start kind of doing, it might be a little too light, start doing kind of wave shapes. And then go in with some darker blue. I don't want the water too dark because I want it to look like, you know, it's getting kind of like light reflected of it on it from the stormy sky. Then I'm going to just go over some of them a little darker shade. Then I'm going to take my flat shader, and it's kind of dry. Well, it is dry, sorry, not kind of. And I'm just gonna kind of drag some of this blue out. I still want some white to show and light areas, but I don't want it all soft. I want it kind of choppy. This is why I like the flat shader, because if it's use it on its edge like this, you can get some nice dry brushing techniques that works well for waves. Okay, and I don't want the, like I say, I don't want the water too dark. I just want it to look like it's reflecting from the sky. So I don't want to overdo this. Okay, so at this point, I think what I will do is go back into the land. And I think it might be dry enough to go in and just darken it up a bit more. Just going to continue this all the way across. So now it's just going to be like the land on the far side of the lake. Okay, and I'm just kind of straightening out my horizon line there. Okay, so now while that is still wet, I'm going to clean off my number 2 brush, and not going to dry it completely because it doesn't hold a lot of water, but I'm just going to touch this edge and have this bleed down. I don't want it to look like a reflection, I just want it to look like a shadow on the water. Like so. Okay, and we can just bring it down into the water. If it's not bleeding as much as you want, just go add a little bit more of the brown. Like so. Because this is not quite bleeding as much as I would like, so I'll just kind of drag that down. And this one's bleeding a little too much, so go figure. It's all good. It was still wet, so we can just touch it up. I'm just going to feather this down so I don't get a weird kind of hard edge or bloom here. Okay, and I'm just going to go in with a wet brush and a little bit of that pigment and just kind of tap it in here. Just like so. Maybe a little bit more. I don't want to overdo it. But there is a fair amount of water there, so. Okay. So because I put too much water there, you're going to see my mistake here. It's starting to bloom here. But it's okay because I can go over the mountains and that horizon line with an even darker brown, which is the plan anyway. So we just want to get this kind of shadow established first. So I'm just going to deepen that up a bit. Like so. And while that's doing that, I'm going to go back to the sky and just get a little bit more of that, whoops, dark blue for the sky. And just tap. Well, it should be still a little wet up here. Just going to tap in a bit more of a darker blue, maybe a little more gray than blue. And I'll also feather this out too. I just wanted to get it a little more gray up here. Okay, like so. Now you don't want to go in with a sopping wet brush to do this, so just clean off your brush, tap it off from your paper towel, and just drag it all along here. If you go in with too much water, it's going to form a bloom on you, and I don't want that. That's for sure. Okay. So now that that's wet, I can just start tapping in. Because whatever I tap in now is just going to go where it's wet. So it shouldn't create too many weird kind of blooms on us. So again, I'll just clean off my brush and soften this edge. Okay, and now that the land has dried, you can see how much lighter it is. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of the gray blue again, not too much, and just do another kind of light wash over some of this water, just to deepen it up a little bit off to the sides, and we can blend out that shadow from the landmass a little more. Just be careful you don't overdo it. So I'm just going to soften it up here a little bit. So that is good. I'm going to wait until this dries before I go back in and touch up the land. Now we're just going to finish off the land and then we should be done. So back into this mixture here, going to make it even darker this time. Okay, and I'm going to do, just going to turn this and I'm just going to run right along the horizon line again. Okay, so I'm just putting one final dark coat on the mountains slash trees. And I'm just going to make this bleed just a little bit more. So I'm just going to touch the very edge of this. So just want it to come down a little bit more. Okay, so actually now that this is dry, I think I want to add a little bit more blue or darkness to the water just at the very edges here. So just going to put a little bit there and over in the other corner. Okay, like so. And just kind of feather it out a little bit. I don't want to overdo it, but it just was a little too pale. So just soften it up a bit with just a damp brush. And that ought to do it. Okay, so let's take the tape off and see how she looks. So there is your Stormy Skies landscape. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that you picked up some tips along the way. As always, if you give this a try and you're on Instagram, please be sure to post and tag me. And to see more beginner-friendly tutorials like this one, please be sure to subscribe and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you know when my new video's up. So that's it for now, guys. Take care and I'll see you on the next one.